Hi Team Rerun, another video on the pillars of health, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about ultra processed foods. It's become such a sort of in the mainstream kind of topic and idea, which is great that more people have more awareness, but with more awareness and more conversation, particularly on things like social media, there tends to also start becoming more confusion about what are ultra processed foods and why are they bad. I guess the first thing to say is that as humans, we process all of our foods, right? Because we cook them. So by chopping them up, by cooking them, by adding them together, by adding, maybe different spices or flavours or, a pinch of salt or a little bit of a twist of pepper. We are processing our foods. So, when I batch cook, that is what I do. I process a load of food, I put it in little pots and I stick it in the freezer. I think that the problem is when we're talking about ultra processed foods, is the fact that they are more the end of the scale, where they're being scientifically sort of designed in a slightly sneaky fashion to make us eat more and to make them be ultra palatable in a way that is often done with kind of very carefully and scientifically balancing out the amount of sugar, salt and fat and the texture of the food, so that it's not just kind of cooking something and then packaging it or freezing it. It's very specifically being designed to kind of bypass the bit of our brain that tells us when we're full because of the soft texture, or being in this kind of real or almost burning on an addictive sort of point where the salt and the sugar and the fat levels are just at this kind of bliss point for our brain, where we feel like we really want to kind of keep eating. So how do you find out about which foods these are? So, let's take ready meals as an example. So some ready meals, and I often have a load of cook ready meals in my freezer. If you look at the ingredients, they are things I would recognise, things that I might put into a batch cooked dish and put in a little Tupperware tub and stick in the freezer. And they've effectively done that. So they've home cooked food, they've portioned it up, they've immediately frozen it because that stops food from going off, and then they've sold it and you need to keep it frozen until you start eating it. And a lot of tinned foods actually the same. Tinning is, if you're a fan of Inside the Factory, previous presenter accepted, then you'll know that, for example, Heinz soups are made pretty much as you would just make your own soup at home. They're stuck in a can and then they're pasteurised. There's no need for, in a lot of these sort of areas, to add all those sort of additional chemicals and tweaks to them. But there are companies and places that do. And also it turns out that it's quite a lot cheaper to make longer lasting foods. If you add a load of sort of chemicals and preservatives and things in them that are going to make them look nicer and taste better and feel fresh for longer. So bread is a great example. If I go to my wonderful local bakery, which I'm very lucky to have near me, apart from the fact that I have an inability to slice bread straight, if I buy a loaf of bread, and even if I keep it in, a sort of bread bin or a sealed tin, it will be going stale within sort of 3 or 4 days. And that's what bread does for, a lot of sort of sliced, packaged, in the plastic bag type bread. They put stuff in it to make it last longer. So what are we really trying to avoid? We're trying to avoid things that have long ingredients lists of stuff you don't recognise. Lots of things that have been, kind of added in to not just to make it last longer, but the more ultra processed end of the scale is where they're adding stuff in to make you eat more by making the food kind of softer and smushy, making that texture so we don't feel full. And as I say, balancing both the sugar, all three, the sugar, the salt and the fat within the same food. So you'll often find quite high sugar levels in savoury foods. That's a bit of a giveaway because they're adding that in to make it taste in that bliss point so that we end up eating more. If you want to find out more, there's a great programme that's been on the BBC. It's still on iPlayer, called Irresistible. Talks a little bit more about this, but what I would say is we've, particularly with in running, people have gone, energy gels are processed foods. Well, yes, they are, in that people have mixed these together and they've put them in a packet, and maybe recovery drinks and protein supplements, also processed foods, yes. but they're not in that ultra processed end of things where they're being processed for bad reasons in order to make us eat more, and with something that has really low, in fact, no nutritional value, and is in fact probably in the long term going to be bad for us, where there are other things that are processed purely for convenience, to package them in a convenient way like a gel, or to make them last a little bit longer, for example. So yeah, have a little bit of a read around that topic, and have a little bit of a look at Irresistible on iPlayer if you get a few minutes. Happy running.